Hey guys, it's Carolyn. Welcome back to the podcast. And today we're talking about money, which is what a more important topic for any business. So I have my guest today, Jason Kruger of Signature Analytics, a business that is known for giving business owners the financial insight to make smart business decisions. Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Carolyn.
Oh, thank you for taking the time. So before we dive in, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, as you can imagine, is in finance and accounting. I spent the first 10 years of my career in public accounting, working for some of the larger firms in the industry, I guess. Deloitte being one of them. So they're, if you're familiar with the Big Four and the big finance, accounting, consulting firms, I had exposure there. And then I left, I did that for close to 10 years, and then I left Deloitte in 2008 and started Signature Analytics. And so what I observed, and I worked with companies in all industries, but also worked actually with a number of companies in the construction space. And what I observed was companies in the small mid market really deserved better than what they had as it relates to their accounting and financial environment. And so a lot of companies, their focus is in a lot of different areas, and they hire a bookkeeper and they just hope for the best. And accounting becomes a necessary evil of, got to pay bills, got to invoice, got to collect cash, and got to pay my taxes at the end of the year. And as companies grow, they start to feel the pain points of not having good visibility into cash flows, not having good visibility into profitability. And so they bump up against these challenges of also conversations with banks or from a bonding perspective. Financial information becomes more and more important. So started Signature Analytics in 2008 with the idea that we can bring the top talent to the marketplace to be able to support these companies that are small, mid-sized, looking to grow, and it's a flexible, scalable way to provide them that top talent, but at a cost point that makes sense. And so I've grown that over the years, and have a great team, about 75 people on our team, all full-time employees that really focus. Construction is really a core focus of ours, and we just love working in that space.
So why, in your opinion, or why do you think it's changed from like the traditional model of companies always having an in-house accounting team and doing things in-house? Why is outsourcing a better idea?
Yeah, well, there's a number of reasons. One is, as I mentioned, before, you could get that higher level expertise, but only have to pay for a fraction of the cost. So that's one. So if you bring in a bookkeeper and you're allocating all your costs to that one individual, you're kind of stuck with that level of expertise. And so as you grow and as things become more complex, and as you start having conversations with financing, banks or outside third parties, or bonding, or having to provide your financials to third parties, things become more sophisticated, and it's good to have somebody with that higher level of expertise driving those discussions and conversations to get through those. The other point is you're kind of stuck with what you got. So sometimes, you make a great hire and you luck out almost, and you have a great person that's in there that's going to stay with you for 20 years. And other times, or that person leaves and you bring in somebody else, and it's a disaster, right? They're not who you thought they might be, and it's challenging if you don't have that expertise to know if you're hiring a good person. So you're kind of hoping for the best, right? And with where we're at, if there is turnover, we manage that. You don't have to worry about hiring a full-time person. You don't have to worry about benefits. You don't have to worry about payroll taxes. You have that flexibility. You don't ever have to worry about, oh no, someone left and they know everything, and now I can't even pay my bills. I can't pay my people. I don't know how payroll works. All that kind of stuff. So we manage that and take that load off of their plate, and it becomes a great situation. And in a lot of cases, we're actually working collaboratively with somebody that they might have in house. So maybe they have a lower level person. They've outgrown that. The company has, or the firm has grown, and they don't need to bring in a CFO. They don't need to bring in a controller, but they need that expertise to layer and provide that support, and we can do that as well. And we do that in a lot of cases.
So then like one of the big things is monthly reporting, right?
Mhm.
How do you make sure what should be a reasonable turnaround time to get monthly reporting? And then
Yeah,
how do you use that to grow the business?
yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably the number one most important thing that we want to drive. So we want to make sure that there's good processes to pay the bills, to invoice, collect, critical, right? Cash
Mhm.
flow, understanding cash flow.
Absolutely.
And when we talk about reporting, cash flow reporting is probably the first report that we want to develop. We want to understand, what does your cash flow look like now historically, but what are our projections as we move forward? And so we want to do that at least monthly, but even potentially on a weekly basis. So when we're talking about, the ins and outs of cash, and a lot of, in construction, margins can be thin, and we need to be able to manage cash effectively. When it comes to your standard monthly reporting, um, that we want to have done at least within the first 15 days after the month ended. And then when you're talking about WIP reporting, depends on the cycle and the types of jobs that you have. And if you have long-term jobs, maybe we can do it once a month. If you have jobs that are turning pretty quick, maybe we want to be looking at WIP reporting weekly, or in some cases even daily for some of our clients. So it really depends on the types of jobs that you have going. But the WIP report is kind of what I call it's almost the Bible of construction. If you don't have anything else, you have to have that. You have to have confidence in that so you can really manage your jobs effectively. And if you don't have that, and if you're getting that report or any reports a month or 2 or 3 months later, well, you've missed out on a lot of opportunity to pivot or make adjustments to improve the job that's maybe going sour, or manage margin a little bit more effectively to maximize business return, I guess.
So, from an owner's perspective on these financial reporting on a monthly, what should an owner be looked at, or what should they be looking at specifically? What should they be most concerned about?
Yeah, so I would say so your basic financials are your balance sheet, your P&L, right? But that will tell you from a construction perspective, that'll tell you from a high level. Okay, this is how my business is working. And what I like to tell business owners is that a lot of times they say, well, I don't really pay attention to the balance sheet. I just look at the P&L and are we profitable? And what I always say is, well, if your balance sheet is not accurate, your P&L is probably not accurate either. So you may be looking at numbers that are not reflective of reality. You may be looking at numbers that uh, show that you're much more profitable than you really are. So even if you don't understand the balance sheet, we still want to make sure we're managing AR, still managing AP, but we also want to make sure we have confidence in the accuracy so that we have confidence in the accuracy of the overall financials. And so you have your basic financials, and you say, okay, as a whole, let's say we're looking at our P&L. We want to make sure we understand the trends of what's happening throughout the year and historically so that we can project into future months as well. And a lot of times we'll talk to contractors and they'll say, well, this month I was super profitable. Last month we were super unprofitable, like it's bouncing all over the place. And a lot of that is because they might be recording their financials maybe on a cash basis, or in some cases we've seen where maybe they take deposits up front, they put that in revenue, and all of a sudden it looks like they've had a great month, but they haven't actually performed any work yet. So they have to perform the work a month or two later. And so it's skewing the results. And so when they're looking at their financials, it's hard to even have any confidence of what's going to happen next month. Am I going to be profitable? Am I not? And so we want to make sure we have consistency so we can really start to manage and understand what is the true margin of this business. Once we understand that, then we can start to make decisions on how to improve that. And when you're looking at construction, I mean, if you increase your margin by 1%, let's say you're a $10 million firm, and there's a lot of firms out there that are 20, 50, $100 million or more. You improve your margin by 1% on $10 million. That's $100,000 that drops straight to the bottom line, and that goes in the owner's pocket. That can go to reinvest back into something that can, go into the hiring a supervisor, that can go somewhere else. But really looking at that margin I want to look at it from the percentage point. How can we, where's our baseline and how do we improve that? If you don't have your numbers, you're just kind of running your business and you're hoping for the best. And so those are things that we look at. And then when you go down to the drop down into that WIP schedule, what we were talking about before, that's how you can really manage on a job by job basis and your job profitability. Where are you? How do you, how can we maximize profitability on the types of contracts that we have in place, and future contracts, how we bid on future contracts as well.
Gotcha. So you said something interesting. So like when you receive a deposit, it doesn't go in income. It shouldn't be on your
Right.
P&L. Like for work you
Yep.
haven't started yet, where does it go? Where should you put it?
Right. So it goes on your balance sheet, right? So as technically as a liability, until you've performed the work.
Gotcha.
And so and I brought that up because it was actually a real live situation where we talked to somebody and said, hey, look, I'm getting frustrated because when I get my P&L from my bookkeeper, it looks like we were super profitable, like we're feeling really good, and then the next month we lost a few $100,000, and I'm like, what's going on? And so we started talking to them, and that was the situation. Anytime they got funds, they would book it as revenue in that particular month. And so there's no way to accurately see how well you're truly doing unless you can I'm gonna get kind of nerdy from an accounting perspective, but you gotta it's matching the revenue with the expense in the right period. It doesn't mean it's not really when you receive the cash. It's actually when you perform the work is when you truly earn the revenue, and that's when the cost is incurred as well. So you can match that effectively, and that really tells you the true performance of your business. And so if you're getting a deposit, you're marking that as revenue. You maybe think you're doing great. You still got to fulfill that on the back end, and you're not going to get any quote unquote revenue out of that because you've already recorded that. And so you're going to have a tough month. And then that comes back to the managing cash flow as well, which is, hey, I got a deposit up front. I have to fulfill on this in a month or two, and so I know I'm going to have a lot of costs. So I got to count. I got to manage this cash. I can't just blow this cash because I won't be able to support what I have in a couple months to fulfill this job requirement. And so that's why cash management, cash flow forecasting is so critical in construction as well.
No, absolutely. And kind of on that topic, the markets go up and down. How can you prepare your business, or construction business specifically, for a recession or for a downturn?
Yeah. That's construction, as we know, is very um, uh,
Inconsistent.
yeah, it's very inconsistent and very reliant in a lot of cases on the economic trends of what are happening. Um, Backlog is understanding your backlog is critical,
Yeah.
and then understanding the economic trends I think is critical so that if you do have a decent backlog, you can start to then prepare for future events of what might be happening. The first thing I can say is, make sure you have a good process to produce good financial information so you actually have a starting point to be able to make decisions. The second is have an understanding of, again, what your future cash flows look like. And we like to estimate out at least 3 months in advance. Once you get beyond that, it can get a little fuzzy and you're making more guesses, but you should be able to have should be able to project pretty well 3 months. A rolling 3 month cycle is typically what we like to do, and we like to do it on a weekly basis. So it's a 13-week cash flow is basically the industry norm, and that's projecting out for the next roughly 3 months or one quarter. Um, Really understanding your overall expense structure from a SG&A or sorry, sales, marketing, G&A, general administrative costs within your business, and understanding, are you truly getting value out of those costs right now, or are there or did you invest in this software 5 years ago and you're paying for it and you're not really using it, right? And so optimize some of those costs as well. Make sure that every employee you have is really aligned with where the business is going. And we've seen cases where somebody was hired a few years ago because there was one initiative that never came to fruition. And that person's still on board. So are they providing the value that you hired them for? Sometimes those are tough discussions, but sometimes those individuals can pivot and provide value, and other times they're just kind of sitting there. What I encourage, make sure you have a very strong relationship with a bank, so that and looking at if you can get a line of credit when time you want to get a good line of credit when times are good,
Yeah.
because you're not going to get one when times are bad. And so if you have that in place now and a good relationship with a bank that understands construction and contractors is very important. Some banks just say, hey, we don't even work with contractors. And other banks say, hey, what, we do, and we like them, and we understand them, and we work with them. That's very important as well. So get that line of credit in place now. Get that banking relationship in place right now. Um, Make sure that if you do have bonding or surety relationship, make sure you have that. What I like to encourage is leverage your outside, what I call partners, your banking relationship, your partners, your other advisors, your surety. Um, the more we can be forward and have a good relationship with them and upfront about what's happening in our business, the better things are going to be for you if things turn sideways a little bit. They understand you, they trust you. If you get financing or you have a line of credit and it's all just transactional and it's not relationship, and you don't build that relationship, you're not going to get as much grace maybe as things turn downward as well. So there's a lot of things. I think just construction can be more transactional in some cases, but really the relationships are critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you said cash flow and keeping cash. What are some tips for companies so the question is, should they keep and hold cash? Should they have a reserve? And if so, how should they set that up so it's like automatically being done?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. There's always a balance because the individual or the owner, I mean, they want to be able to reward themselves for the success of what they've accomplished. And I think that's where being able to project or forecast out or developing a budget is so important.
Hmm.
Um, the best case is to create some level of consistency on what your expectations are from a personal level and what you need to be paying yourself from your business. And so that whole process that we're going through right now with a lot of our clients is starting to prepare for 2025 and saying, okay, what does the market look like? What does your current backlog look like? What are our expectations for 2025? What are my personal needs from a compensation perspective? Let's build that into the budget. If we exceed the budget, there's opportunity to pay myself more. But start working through different scenarios. If we exceed the budget, is there opportunity to reinvest back into the business for some reason for growth? A lot of that is dependent upon the goals of the owner and the executive team. What are they looking? Are they happy having a $10 million year over year business? Do they want this to be a $100 million, $200 million, $500 million business? All of those factor into how you reinvest back into the business, and then ultimately what you take out of the business. If you want to be, from a cash reserve perspective, if you're looking at growth and significant growth, well, a lot of times that takes more cash to be able to reinvest and build the infrastructure to support that, and that should be taken into consideration from a budgeting perspective as well.
Gotcha. All right. So quite common that somebody in construction gets in the business because they're good at what they do, but they really don't know the business side. And so, what would be your process if someone comes to you and like, oh, I have 2 years of some information, not some information. I think I'm making money, but I don't know. How can you help?
Yep. Yeah. Um, yeah. We talk to business owners all the time, and I started my own business too, right? So my background was is accounting and finance. I got to work with hundreds of different types of businesses, so I got to see how they operate and the financial side of things as well. One thing I always tell our clients is, as a business owner, you started the business because you're good at one thing, but to grow and to achieve the goals you want, you have to know all aspects of your business, and that means not just what you're good at and why you started it, but you have to know and start to become an expert in sales and marketing and human resources and accounting and finance. And the operational side is usually what they're already good at, right? So it doesn't mean you have to be a true expert, but you have to be able to hire the right people, the experts, but still manage them enough so that you know that you're being successful. If somebody comes in and says, hey, you know what, I don't know if I'm profitable. I don't know if I'm, I don't know what's going on here. The first thing that I ask them is, okay, what are you using an accounting system and what are you using? And then the second is, if there's going to be some level of cleanup, it's taking a look at the information that they currently have in place and say, okay, what does this look like? And usually, if we have to go back, we're going to say, okay, let's make sure we have all of the bank statements and the banking information. I mean, usually everything for the business will run through the bank account in one form or the other, right? So let's make sure we have a completeness associated with all the transactions associated with business, and then we start to understand the jobs and the types of jobs that the business is operating upon. There's a couple of different approaches depending on how far back we want to go. In a lot of cases, it's, hey, you know what? The past is the past. Let's find a cutoff date and let's make sure we have good processes moving forward so that we can trust what we have in place. But to get to that point where you have good processes moving forward, you still have to have some level of cutoff and confidence in what we talk about is the balance sheet, and we have to reconcile the bank accounts. We have to have confidence that our accounts receivable and accounts payable balances are accurate. We have to know where we are. We need to start to build out that WIP report and understand where we are on each existing job. And as jobs close out, then we have a process to track and manage existing and new jobs moving forward. So really, it comes down to saying, okay, here's where we are. Talking through the value of the historical financials. If they're required to have reviewed financials or audited financials from a bank, well, then we got to do a pretty significant cleanup maybe. If they're not and they're mostly used internally, okay, let's draw the line and let's make sure we have good processes moving forward so that you have good clarity on what's happening moving forward. So different approaches based on how they use the financials and the situation that they're in.
Gotcha. So tell me about some of the services that Signature Analytics offers. Is it like a one-time fee? Is it monthly? What does that look like?
Yeah, really, what we bring to the table is that leadership at the financial side. So what I would call maybe a CFO leadership, that strategic side, that that a lot of companies in the space um, don't have access to, and really specialized in the construction space, which is critical. A you know a CFO in a biotech for a biotech is not going to be a good CFO in construction, right? I mean, it's a totally different industry, totally different market. So having that experience is critical, and then bringing that accounting leadership to make sure that we have the firm, the company has good processes, not only to invoice and pay bills, to manage cash flow, to have visibility into cash flow, ultimately then to close the books, to be able to manage and have good reporting around each individual projects, and then ultimately financial information. Um, in some cases, we take over all of accounting. We do it all. In other cases, as I mentioned before, the company has, or the firm has a bookkeeper. They've started to feel the pain points of outgrowing that bookkeeper, and so we can come in instead of them having to hire now a CFO or controller. That's going to be very expensive. We can come in and we can provide support, leverage the bookkeeper as much as possible to keep our costs down and more efficient, and make sure that we drive the success of accounting and finance. Make sure that the owner has the right information that they need to be able to make decisions and achieve the goals that they have and continue to grow their business. So collaboratively work with ownership to make sure they have confidence in what's happening from the numbers perspective. And our typically it's an ongoing relationship where we're really driving the success of that department, that function of the business, where they don't have to now hire a CFO, they don't have to hire a controller, they don't have to hire depending on where they're at. We can flex and be scalable and really fill in the gaps at a cost point that makes sense. And it's typically month over month. We like to actually get structured on a fixed fee, meaning a fixed flat fee month over month. Sometimes it takes a couple months or a few months to get there as we learn the business, but we want to make sure we're very clear on the fee structure, because our goal is to be a long-term partner and build that relationship. And so the fee has to align with the value that our clients see. And typically we do a good job of that. We actually have a great testimonial from one of our clients in the construction field on our website, that he speaks to the value that we've brought to them, that I would highly encourage listeners to go take a look at, because he speaks to kind of a lot of the things that we talked about today.
Gotcha. So tell me your favorite client success story.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of them, right? I mean, they came to us when they were, $8 to $10 million contractor. It's a video testimonial. They'll walk you through that, the client well, and now they're going to be pushing 80 to 100 million, and so that scalability, and building the infrastructure to scale and achieve that growth is critical, right? Where we see lots of times things start to break and fall apart is the revenue might be there, but if the infrastructure isn't there to support that, that's the critical component. And if you don't have visibility into the financials, you might run out of cash before you actually get there, because sometimes growth equates to making additional investments in the business as well. And so in this case, and they've had some significant growth. This is over the last 2 or 3 years, where we've really helped them to establish the infrastructure from a finance and accounting perspective, so that the owner has confidence that the information he's getting is good, in good shape. He can make decisions off of that. We talk through that information with him on a consistent basis every month. Helped him to ensure that he has good banking relationships in place to support his growth. He's now required, I believe, to have reviewed financials. So we brought in and recommended a firm to support that process with him. And so really there to support the growth that they have had. And that's the most exciting stuff for us, right? Is to see our clients succeed and to give them the tools to allow them to succeed, and hopefully to identify opportunities to create some additional profitability in areas that they didn't even know about before as well.
Awesome. If somebody wanted to know more about Signature Analytics, where would they go?
Yeah, our website is great, signatureanalytics.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can shoot me an email, letter J, Kruger, Kruger, @signatureanalytics.com. And we just like talking to business owners. If we can help them, that's great. A lot of times, if we can't, know someone that probably can. So really just, any way we can help out, we're open to do that.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Jason, for taking the time to get on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carolyn. Appreciate it.